City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded November 6, 2023.
All right, I have 6 o'clock. We call the Plan Commission meeting to order. First item is a roll call, please.
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Beacom.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Rice. Here. Schuler, we have... Go. Schuler. We have quorum. We have 7 people in attendance.
All right. So our first item on the agenda is the report of the October 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Plan Commission.
Move approval.
Moved by Cooper, seconded by Arnson. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Hans Waldock to amend the City of Stevens Point comprehensive future land use map for the purpose of amending the future land use designation for an unaddressed parcel near West Harding Avenue with the parcel identified in your packet from non-developable restrictive ownership to residential. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So before I kind of get into the details of the request, I think it would be helpful just to provide a snapshot aerial view of the property. So both parcels are owned by the applicant. The purpose for both this request and for the next agenda item is focusing on that back lot that does not abut West Harding Avenue. So on the next slide, now this is going to get kind of convoluted, one of the more convoluted types of requests, so bear with me. But to provide a little backstory as to why we're here this evening. So the applicant approached me during a on-site inspection, unrelated on-site inspection, with the request of installing an accessory structure on that back lot. Typically, if folks want to install an accessory structure, they go through the process of getting a permit and then working through our office. This was a situation that if the applicant would have wanted to put a parcel, accessory structure on that back parcel, that would have been prohibited outright because there's not a principal structure on that lot. Our zoning code doesn't allow for an accessory structure to be built without a house or other primary structure on that parcel. One way to kind of get around that, given that there's 2 parcels under the same form of ownership, is to combine both parcels, which is, I wouldn't say commonly, but has been happened in the past for other individuals that they've gone that route of combining both parcels into one so they could install an accessory structure on that combined parcel and still be in compliance with their zoning code. The issue with the potential combination is because both parcels are zoned differently. The front parcel directly along West Harding Avenue, where the house is, that's zoned R2 single family residential. The back lot is zoned conservancy. So the second part of this request, the next agenda item, is going to be focusing on rezoning this back parcel from conservancy to R2 single family residential. So both parcels would be under the same form of zoning classification, and then therefore can be combined. So one of the review standards that city staff, this commission will look at for any rezoning request is making sure that it's compatible with the city's comprehensive plan. Namely, making sure that the future land use designations for both parcels are consistent. With this case, as I think we can go on the next slide, again, the left picture shows the zoning classifications of the 2 parcels. The right-hand side shows the future land use designation. Parcel where the house is has a future land use designation of residential. The back lot, the property in question, has a future land use designation of not developable / restrictive ownership. So the purpose of this first request by the applicant is to amend the future land use map for that residential designation. And for any request where there's a change in a conservancy designation for a parcel, naturally there's a higher level of strict scrutiny involved just to make sure that it's not going to pose problems with, say, environmental protection for that area. And if we go on the next slide, I think there's a couple items that I'd like to address. First off, you see the parcel in relation to some key environmental factors that are located nearby. You can see that the parcel is not located with any floodplain zones, not located with any defined wetlands, and the parcel itself doesn't have any hydric soils as part of the soil composition that would deem it to be possible for there to be wetlands located on there. And the right image on the right, and this is included in the packet as well, shows the environmental considerations map shown within the current city's comprehensive plan, really showing why this parcel has a conservancy designation, and that's because of the low depth to groundwater of about 0 to 3 feet. Since purpose of this request is to install an accessory structure where that structure is going to be built at grade, there's not a concern from city staff perspective as to amending the future land use designation. And you can see the image on the right. There's a significant swath of the city's north side, really a good swath of Business 51 once you get north of 4th Ave. That falls within the same situation as this property, where the only quote-unquote limitation for development is that low depth to groundwater. So staff would recommend approval of this future land use designation and would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, before we open up the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commission?
Yeah, this is Beacom.
Yeah.
Question, so is Mr. Waldock's intent to combine them if this is rezoned?
Correct.
And do we have an assurance that he will do that if this is changed?
Not an assurance, but that's his intention.
And just for clarification, city staff would not issue an accessory structure permit unless the parcels would be combined.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to build a primary structure on there right now because there's no street access.
Correct.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions before I open up the public hearing? Okay, I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, step to the lectern and provide that testimony.
Ginger Keemer, Alder for District 3. I just had a question. Are there other residents along Harding Avenue that own the lot, conservation lots to the rear? And is there, oh, very good. If other residents were in a similar situation and wanted to do the same thing, is it likely that they would get a similar review process and answer?
Well, they darn well better.
And Alderperson, this is just a public hearing,
Okay.
so we're taking testimony. The questions normally are reserved for when the discussion on the item is coming,
Okay,
so.
we'll
but
wait till the end.
We'll get your answer after the public hearing. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing and hearing no one wishing to offer any additional testimony, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Now bring it back to the commission. Director,
Sure.
you want to answer the alderperson's question, please?
Yep, so kind of interesting, the parcels that are on the north side of West Harding is what is considered a ghost plat, wherein you have dedicated parcels but no infrastructure. And so at whatever point in which the city or a developer did those and never put the infrastructure in, those parcels essentially were sold to the property along West Harding. So along the entire stretch, they are owned either by the adjacent property owner or maybe someone right over to the other side, either side of it. And we would pretty much follow the same process, go through rezoning. The big issue, as Adam has brought up, is you have split zoning, conservation on the north and residential on the south. And so you'd have to go through the same process. We could encourage that neighborhood either through a city-initiated rezoning or by petition of the neighborhood, go through essentially the same process at once, but because we had one request, that's why we're going through it this time. Unless you live further up on West Harding and you're a member of the Plan Commission, there's a much more convoluted, complicated process for Mr. Schuler, so.
All right. Any other comments or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the future land use plan to reflect the request.
Thank you. Seconded by Arnson. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Hans Waldock to rezone an unaddressed parcel near West Harding Avenue with the parcel identified in your packet from Conservancy to R2 Single Family Residential. Director or Adam, anything to add?
Not much more, just one thing. One item of note for any rezone request that's in terms of a review is making sure that the rezoning is consistent with the performance standards for that proposed zoning classification. And in fact, with the combination of the two parcels, it would actually make the 508 West Harding Ave parcel go from legal nonconforming with respect to lot size to legal conforming. So this is just another plus in staff's perspective should this rezoning request be approved.
Good. Any clarifying questions before I open up this public hearing? Okay, I'll declare this public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step to the lectern and provide that. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Hearing and seeing no one wishing to testify, I will declare the public hearing closed. And we'll bring it back to the commission. Before I do, I've got some new faces here. It's a legal process that we have to go through. Talk about the public hearing. A public hearing is a legal process. We have to announce it 3 times, allowing people to speak on the public hearing, and then we can close the public hearing and take action. The public hearing is just so the commission gets input. Generally, it's not a back and forth question and answer session. That happens now. So, does anybody have questions, comments, or a motion? Commissioner Cooper.
I would move approval of the request as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 5 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Mike Sinkowski, representing Schmeekley Reserve Visitor Center, for a conditional use permit to install a ground-mounted solar array at an unaddressed parcel off of North Point Drive with the parcel identified in your packet, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 1, Sub A, Sub 5. Before we open up the public hearing, Adam?
May I remove myself from this agenda item?
You can recuse yourself from the vote if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll note that. Thank you. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So this similar type request has been brought before this Plan Commission twice over the last, I believe, 3, 4, 5 years now. But I'll preface by saying that the installation of a ground-mounted solar system by itself is considered a permitted use. The reason for this conditional use request is more in relation to the location of the proposed ground-mounted solar array. So ground-mounted solar arrays are treated like an accessory structure where you have to meet the street, side, and rear yard setbacks. For this property, since it is zoned conservancy, it does require a minimum street setback of 50 feet. As you see on the slide that's shown on your screen, the applicant is proposing a street setback of just shy under 36.5 feet. The city zoning code does allow for, in the Conservancy District, applicants to request a lesser street setback for installations like a ground-mounted solar system. So the purpose of this request is to allow for that lesser street setback down from 50 to the proposed 36 feet 4 inches as requested.
Okay, any clarifying questions before I open up the public hearing? Then I will declare that public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step forward. Leave $20 on the counter.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My name is Sean Marr. I'm the alder for this area. This is phase 2 for the Schmeekley Reserve array. This has been going really well, and they're just this is just their next phase of trying to be more environmental and green. So I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing remains open. For the third time, the public hearing is open. Seeing and hearing no one else wishing to provide testimony, I'll declare that public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, we have a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Alderperson Kneebone?
I will move to approve the conditional use permit subject to staff recommendations and limitations.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Beacom. Discussion. Comments or questions from the audience? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 6 is the public hearing with subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend Chapter 23, the zoning ordinance of the revised municipal code. Said request amends Section 23.01 sub 14 sub G pertaining to minimum floor area requirements to install a new mobile home in the City of Stevens Point. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. Ever since the Housing Task Force went through their process of creating their Housing Task Force final report, over the past year, city staff has been working on some strategic regulatory solutions to try to incite new housing construction and rehabilitation onto existing housing units. One of those actions would be the purpose of this request tonight, which would be to reduce the minimum floor area requirement to install a mobile home unit. Currently, if somebody would want to install a mobile home within a designated mobile home park, said mobile home is required to be at least 720 square feet in size. The purpose of this public hearing is to reduce that minimum floor area requirement down to 400 square feet. I'll preface by saying that 400 square feet is not kind of thrown to a wall and see if it sticks. That's the state definition as to what constitutes a mobile home. Anything at or greater than 400 square feet is considered a mobile home. Anything less than that's more considered like a travel trailer, so to speak. So staff is essentially looking to comply with what the state defines a mobile home in terms of size, and would recommend approval of this ordinance amendment.
Thank you. As Adam said, we've been working pretty diligently to find things that we can work with, and this is one of them, reducing the size, the minimum size for a mobile home in compliance with the state. Gives people the opportunity to get smaller homes, which are more affordable, and changing the zoning code is something that we would recommend. Before we open the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions? Okay, you think about that, Pete. I'll declare the public hearing open.
Sean Marr on the Alder for Area 11. I think this is a good idea to try to diversify what we have. Everybody has their own needs. Not everybody wants a 2,000 square foot house, and several mobile homes that I have been in have been nice. Some of them have not been nice, but that's like with any house, any type of residence really. We have a lot of folks who are struggling a lot to try to find some kind of a housing that they can really afford, and several of them can't. And I think this is a good step to try to help those who are having problems finding a place.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing and hearing no one else wishing to provide testimony, we'll declare that public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Cooper?
I would move approval of the request as presented.
Seconded by Rice. Discussion? Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'll pipe in there because I was puzzling about it. Not so much for this, 400 square feet is something, but we've talked about small houses and lots and things. And I know this is a different situation, and I don't know if we're moving towards the small house thing or whatnot, but would this tie in with that at all? Is there any considerations there?
There is the possibility, yes. So we allow smaller square footages on homes, but because of the manufactured nature of mobile homes, there was a different size limit on the ordinance. We had a request for some smaller homes, not 400 square feet, but smaller, that didn't meet our minimum. When we talked about it, we wanted to allow those for the affordability factor, but we wanted to base it on something too. So our zoning administrator did his research, found that the state actually allows a 400 square foot minimum, so that's the size we went with, specifically for manufactured homes. Tiny homes is something that's, small homes, whatever you want to call them, are still very much on the menu. We just haven't had any requests to build those yet.
No, it's good. That's kind of what I figured, but thanks.
Yeah, we're working there.
If I may add one thing.
Absolutely.
Just point of clarification too, that mobile homes itself are only allowed within designated mobile home parks. If there's, say, a vacant lot somewhere in town that somebody would want to install a mobile home on it, that would not be allowed since it's not by itself, the lot, a mobile home park. Just wanted to point that out.
Alderperson Kneebone, and then we'll go down to the Commissioner Rice and Schuler.
The way most of us build our wealth is through homeownership and equity. So anything that we can do to allow people to get into a house, to start to build that equity and build some wealth, that's a good thing. So,
Good.
Good idea.
Commissioner Rice and then Schuler.
I was just curious if city staff had any data or maybe just anecdotal data about the impact that this might have. Do we expect that this will allow more division of lots available within parks? Are we getting requests for previously non-conforming units, and this would allow units to be added? Do we have any?
So, yeah, that's a very good question.
Generally, we don't see that, but.
Yeah, we haven't had a request for new mobile home parks in several decades. And so we don't have, what's currently within our existing parks meets the minimum 720 square foot requirement. And a 720 square foot mobile home is what is considered to be a standard 3-bedroom, 1-bath. What we are seeing more of now is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that are about 600 or so square feet in size, and hopefully that will add more density to some of our mobile home parks. If somebody wanted to come and do a tiny house development, I think we would look at like a planned development district at this time, but as we go through a hopeful rewrite of our zoning code sooner rather than later, we can add a smaller home zoning code within that newer zoning code itself. But right now, this is, as Adam had mentioned, only within existing mobile home parks.
And Commissioner Schuler.
I was just curious how the minimum lot size for mobile home parks is established.
Established through this commission since mobile home parks itself is a conditional use. So anytime, for how our zoning code is structured is that any use that requires a conditional use permit, there's the minimum lot size standards. However, if, say, an applicant would want to get a special exception for that, this plan commission and council would have the authority for granting that. So long way of saying, if there would be a new mobile home park created, it would be this commission's purview to regulate what that minimum lot size.
I was more curious if there was an industry standard, just to kind of get some context.
Oh, for each, okay, I see. I'm not
Yeah.
certain. That I'm not certain.
We should also state that the state of Wisconsin, through the county's Health and Human Services Department, does license mobile homes, and there are state standards that have to be met as part of it as well. So,
Okay, any other comments or questions from anyone? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 7 is yet another request from the city of Stevens Point. This is from Jesse Younger, representing the city of Stevens Point for a sign variance to install a monument sign on the property located at 5200 Coy Drive and an unaddressed parcel off of Coy Drive, consistent with Chapter 2514. This is going to be for the industrial park and the new Ameta Center. Zoning administrator, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so the city has been working with our outside firm as part of a comprehensive wayfinding signage program. Some of the new signs that you've seen been installed over the last few weeks. One proposed sign as part of this wayfinding signage project is to, as the mayor mentioned, install a new industrial park sign located at the end of Coy Drive. This sign, the design of it and subsequent location of it has been done in consultation with Donaldson Company and Midstate. So you see the proposed sign, just some quick SparkNotes version of it is just shy under 30 feet in height, a little over 220 square feet in size, and then the location of that would be pretty close to where Coy Drive dead ends into the Interstate 39 right-of-way. More on that in a little bit. The purpose of this sign variance request is threefold: to exceed minimum standards as it relates to the height, as it relates to the size of the sign, and as it relates to the location. A couple things I'd like to point out in terms of setback. as I mentioned, really the purpose of this, why it's located at the end of Coy Drive, is really twofold. One, so that it's aligned with the Ameta Center. As you recall, when this commission considered that request, the Ameta Center is located off of Coy Drive a little bit farther to the west. So when city staff was working with Midstate back several months ago, there was a desire to have that sign be as close as possible to where the Ameta Center is, just given that new building and given the visitors that will be frequenting that site. And the second reason is more so making sure that the proposed sign is close enough to existing city right-of-way in case there's any servicing, or just in terms of access, making sure it's as close as possible to address those city services. And then as it relates to an increased height and increased size, I'm sure if any of you drove down southbound on I-39, you see, especially once you get over the railroad tracks, over the overpass over the railroad tracks, there's a pretty swath of trees on your right side. So the request for having increased height and increased size, given the speed that commuters will be going along Interstate 39, is to have it higher above the tree line and bigger, so it becomes more visually recognizable for motorists going southbound onto I-39. Again, this is part branding and part trying to identify the location of the Ameta Center. So having increased height, size, and location closer to I-39 is something that city staff is in supportive of, given the varying standards that you see in the packet and on the next slide. And with that, city staff would recommend approval, subject to the conditions that's shown in the packet.
Okay. This is not a public hearing, so we just need a motion. Thank you, Alderperson Kneebone, seconded by Commissioner Cooper.
I have a question.
And a question, go ahead.
I'm just curious if that height is enough, because if I'm not mistaken, aren't the rest of the signs along there 50 to 60 feet?
What's the height of the IBW?
Aren't they higher?
No.
Like I'm thinking of the one by, there's a couple of them out there.
Yeah, there's one over there.
North and south, but I don't know.
They all meet the 20-foot height limitation. The only one that doesn't is the existing Stevens Point Industrial Park sign, and that one I believe is over 20 feet in height.
Okay.
That was constructed, I believe, in the late 60s, early 70s, and is beyond what I would say its useful or aesthetic appeal lifespan. So this would be replacing that. The existing industrial park sign is located south of this specific property, adjacent to what is now Steel King, what was formerly one of the Skyward corporate offices. So that would be coming down as part of this project, and this would replace that. Part of the reason that this is going at the end of Coy Drive with this small easement that we'll be talking about shortly, one is for access, but two is essentially for the power sources needed for the actual signage, and then for the electronic reader board.
Okay, Commissioner Schuler?
I think that given the nature that it's for relatively institutional uses, and it's a multi-identity sign, I think that it's worth supporting.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 8 is a request from the City of Stevens Point to be granted a waypoint sign easement from Donaldson Company, Incorporated, at the property located at 5200 Coy Drive, the parcel identified in your packet. Adam?
Actually, passing this on to me.
Oh, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Would you pay him to do something?
Okay.
So as Adam had mentioned, we had been going through a comprehensive wayfinding signage update for the City of Stevens Point, and for the industrial park sign that you all have approved the sign variance for, we do need to request a sign permit from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, being in close proximity to the interstate. In order for us to have a fully prepared application for that process. We do need an easement on file allowing us to install that sign. In addition, this is one of the only allowable spaces that we can install the sign without hindering access to utilities at the end of Coy Drive. So the city is seeking an easement to be signed by Donaldson Company, and that easement has already been reviewed by Donaldson Company. We're excited to finally have that easement prepared and ready to move forward, so that way we can submit our application for the installation of that sign with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. So as you can see in your packets, that's the proposed size and scale of the easement, so about 264 square feet that we need in order to go forward with installing and maintaining the sign.
Okay. Comments, questions, or a motion? Don't everybody jump at once. Commissioner Schuler, thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Cooper. Discussion. Comments from the audience? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Number 9 is yet another request from the City of Stevens Point to grant a gas easement to the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation at the property located at 4401 State Highway 66 with the parcel identified in your packet. Director.
Fairly straightforward. This is a 12-foot wide easement on the city's airport for new gas service on the southwest portion of the property. The gas line and the easement will run essentially from Highway 66 east along the north side of the existing hangars. Consistent with state statute, you folks are required to review any easements that come through the City of Stevens Point. Airport staff has reviewed this and have no concerns or issues, so staff recommends approval as presented.
Okay, commissioners? Thoughts, comments, motion?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Moved by Arnson, second by Kneebone. Oh, we'll give a second to Kneebone. Sorry, Mike, you're a little slow on the draw. Discussion on the easement request. Yes.
This doesn't have to be run by the FAA or anything, does it, because it's on the airport property, or is that an issue?
No, there's no issue. So we control the land itself. The only thing that the FAA would be involved in is if there's any like large scale equipment that would have to come in and out, and then the security there.
Gotcha,
So,
right,
yep.
okay.
And who requested this be done? Is this WPS, or is there a need on this site that said, hey, we need this power source?
It was the request of one of the hangar owners.
All right. Not the city, but...
Not the city, correct.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Comments from the audience? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Next item on the agenda is item 10, a request from the City of Stevens Point to annex the property located at 5595 Regent Street with the parcel identified in your packet and adjacent to Burlesky Road and Regent Street right-of-way. This is a city-owned property. Director?
Yep, so when we talk about annexation, there's a number of different options for annexation from a township into a municipality, an incorporated municipality. The one that is probably the most simple is the one that's before you. When the municipality owns the parcel, you are able to annex that specific property through a simple act of an ordinance, as opposed to some of the other unanimous approvals, which requires petition to the state of Wisconsin and a number of others. But because the city owns this, it's adjacent to existing City of Stevens Point boundaries. We can go through a simplified process. This is the first annexation in a number that will occur over the next year as the city looks to develop the Forest Creek subdivision north of Regent Street and north of Gala Road, but west of Burlowski Road. And we'll talk about this at the next agenda item, we purchased this property for annexation purposes from the former property owner. They currently occupy that specific property. They have notified the city that they intend to vacate, and so this is one step, as we don't need that specific property once it's become annexed. So staff does recommend approval as presented. More than happy to answer any questions you folks might have.
Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rice. Discussion. Comments from the audience? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 11 is a request from the city of Stevens Point to sell the property located at 5595 Regent Street with the parcel identified in your packet. Once the property is annexed, we don't have any use for it. We want to get it back on the tax rolls as soon as possible. Is that a motion, Commissioner Cooper?
That is a motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by Schuler. Discussion? Comments from the audience? You knew you were going to speak. You could have been halfway there by now. Alderperson Morrow.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that this property is already hooked up to city water and power. I mean, it's not?
It is not, but the intention, the large-scale plan, when we start developing that subdivision, is putting in public utilities. The plan is already in place for that. This piece connects the existing city of Stevens Point to parcels owned to the north of it, giving us a continuous city proper, city annex. What am I looking for here? City boundary. There you go. City boundary, not city owned.
Okay.
But yeah, it's continuous, so that will allow us to make that development of the subdivision to the north of there. Any other comments or questions? You got to cut me some slack. I'm medicated. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. So it was Kneebone and Schuler, I believe, or Cooper and Schuler.
Yeah.
Item number 12 is a discussion-only item regarding our home occupation ordinance. We've been working on this one for a while, and our zoning administrator can give us an update.
Yeah, so as the mayor mentioned, we last brought this draft ordinance before you, I believe, maybe about 2-3 months ago. And based off of the comments that this commission had last time, city staff was working with a couple stakeholders, Alder Shore and Mr. Klein, in terms of kind of fine-tuning some of the questions and concerns that folks have. So really this opportunity for you all tonight is to look at the draft ordinance and then provide any comments or feedback that you have for us.
Okay, we don't need a motion, so we're looking for input. Commissioner Schuler.
A couple things. Are there any other rough spots or areas that need to be further refined that you know of, or just anything going forward will be based on feedback?
Anything going forward would be based off your feedback.
I guess my comment on it would be, when people gave testimony about it, they all seemed to indicate that they wanted a wide latitude for the ability to have a home occupation. And I think the way this has landed to this point has certainly tried to accommodate that, both in terms of the requirements or lack of requirement for permitting and the nature of the do's and don'ts. I think it's very well done up to this point. So thanks for the work on it.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner?
Yeah, this is.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Beacom.
Two things real quick. Number 3, I'm assuming the second sentence is meant to clarify also for independent contractors, if that comes into play, by defining employees.
Just read that quick. Yeah, so
anyhow, my second, okay.
Yeah, so the purpose of defining the term employee is to provide more specification as to what an employee means. So somebody could, the purpose of that sentence is to describe what an employee means. So basically making sure that whatever the work a person does who lives on site or travels to the site, they're considered an employee only when they're providing services, providing work on the property for that business. Outside of that, this ordinance really wouldn't apply.
But yes, contract employees would meet the definition. But if you want, Commissioner, we can definitely add some more specific language as it relates to that.
So an
Yeah,
example.
I mean, just help to include that in parenthetical. The other point I was going to make is number 5 is subjective. I don't know how you could write it so it wasn't subjective, but that to me would be a tough one if you felt like you had to make a case.
Okay. Yeah, that one is going to be a tough one to define. We're trying to do our best to get the intent out there. And if it doesn't meet the intent, as we're talking about, that's something we'd have to look into.
Yeah, and this one was added. We'll use a pretty straightforward example. There's property on Main Street just across the street from Old Main. For a number of years, there was a photo studio in the front of the home. Before, I believe, the 1960s, when that home studio, professional studio was constructed, it was a very lovely Victorian-style house that was added onto and took the residential nature of the home away. This specific one was trying to address that concern, not wanting to lose the residential feel of some of these neighborhoods by adding additions or changing the exterior of the home to make it less residential looking, because it would arguably it would become secondary to the primary use of the property, which would be residential. So that was literally done for a very specific reason for that.
Okay. We'll go to, sorry, Commissioner Schuler, more questions?
No, just a comment on the last thing you were talking about, number 5. I think that, yeah, it is subjective, but I don't know if you can do anything that's more objective with that particular type of intent for a regulation. And I think it'll get down to case by case, neighborhood by neighborhood, which isn't ideal, but you're already admitting that the context changes from place to place throughout the city. And I don't know if you could really spend a lot of time and make it any better. So I think it's one of those things that you're just going to have to wait until the first case comes through to see if there's any obvious ways that you would need to improve something like that. That's just my thought on that.
We'll go to Alderperson Kneebone and then Alderperson Shore.
Just kind of want to clarify some definitions in under C1, under prohibited occupations. It mentions under D it says mini storage, and then over on number 7 it says no exterior storage of materials, and then down in number 9 it says the use of a semi-trailer for a home occupation is prohibited. Could I store stuff in a shed or one of those little moving pods that people put in their driveways? I don't know if you've got a nice little shed in your backyard that's watertight and you wanted to put stuff in it, nobody would really know anyway. I mean, I can understand the heavy equipment and such, but would we want to just clarify what might be considered external storage? And I also am a little concerned about C number 1F, welding or machining. If somebody's doing using welding in an art studio, I mean, could they do that in their garage? I mean, that might be one of those case by case, or
I think sure. So
define the difference between industrial welding or art, an art studio kind of thing.
Let's go one at a time here. I think the storage one, if someone has a shed, that it appears to me that that's fine.
Okay.
Right? I don't think we want the industrial storage boxes, the pods, the empty semi-trailers. I don't think we want those, sitting around in people's yards. So I think a storage shed that currently complies with all the existing ordinances is allowed under this. And that's probably the best way to keep it. The welding or machining, correct me if I'm wrong, Administrator, but it seems to be the primary intent of the purpose. Like Mike's welding.
Yeah.
If I'm doing an occasional weld to fix a piece of equipment or to create art or, a bike repair, that would be permitted. But if my primary function is to weld things or machine things, that would be prohibited under this proposal. Correct? Okay. Anything else, Alderperson?
No, just.
Alderperson Shore.
Thank you, Mayor. And these are all great questions, and every round of review of this has been so helpful. I wanted to speak to the intent on the employees and an overall intent in relation to that. I mean, the overall intent is to sort of not be unrealistic and pretend that there's going to be no, outward signs that there's home occupation. The neighbors won't notice anything. But I think the overall intent is to sort of keep those within reason. And we had some slight confusion on the employees. Trevor Rourke, came and said, does that mean that if my payroll grows to 3 employees that I can't base it out of my home? And this isn't about payroll. As with other parts, it's about comings and goings. And so, it's how many employees are, showing up every day because that's their place of work.
Right.
And just keeping it to, people who live there plus 2, I think is what we have here.
Right.
I think we do have kind of honed this into something that'll really serve us well, and be supportive and welcoming of small-scale businesses. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderperson. And just for clarification, in item number 3, second sentence says, for the purpose of this section, employee shall refer to a person for whom the property where the home occupation is taking place is their place of work. So if Mike Wiesa has a typing business and I employ 5 people to type things, they all come to my house in the morning and start typing, that would be prohibited. But if I run let's say a bicycle delivery service, and they're employees, but they don't come to my house to go to work. They work other workplaces. That is permitted. Okay?
I do think this needs to be massaged a little bit, that the sub 3 were the employees, and we'll add the
We can work on it.
Yep.
I think that last sentence clears it up, but I guess I know what we're talking about too, so. Okay, any other comments? Yes, sir.
I just have one about the pet boarding, and just to clarify, pet boarding exceeding 3 animals on the premises, that's in addition to the pets that you might have there.
Correct.
Right. And 3 is a number that we could work on as well. For example, the city allows up to 4 chickens. If I'm going on vacation to Aruba and I need Pete to take care of my chickens, I bring those chickens over, now I'm in violation. I did chickens just because Plover might be watching. So I think maybe 3, I'll give you an example, right? We've got 2 dogs, but we occasionally watch my daughter's dogs. Sometimes she watches our dogs. She has 3. 5 dogs is too many, just for the record. And they range
You're
in
not
size.
a business doing that. You're not getting
It's not.
paid.
No, it's not a business. But if we went to an event or something that took us overnight, someone would have to watch those dogs. Now, I don't know that we'd give 5 to everybody or 5 to one person, because again, that's a lot. But she's got 3 dogs of her own. So we can work on that number a little bit too, and we'd be curious for any feedback that someone might have in regards to that. What about goldfish? If I have a half a dozen goldfish and I bring them over to Ryan's house to watch my goldfish?
They'll die, but yeah, you can go down.
Fish fry. All right, any other comments on the proposal? We're getting there, and I appreciate everyone's help. We've been working on this for months, and I think we're getting close because there's less and less questions. Mr. Rourke.
Thank you, Chair Wiesa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. I think, definitely agree that this is coming to a better place than where it started. Thanks for the clarifications today already. I did have 2 questions and a comment. Question on 7, so I guess that's C sub 7. And I think this is kind of piggybacking off of what Alder Newbone was mentioning with materials or equipment. So like business equipment for me in the subject matter of my bicycle delivery business that people have mentioned, if I end up storing my cargo bicycle outside because it worked okay outside the garage, that's considered business equipment, but it's kind of silly to have it's just a bicycle. It doesn't really do harm. And then an example of materials that is kind of confusing, and maybe it's just, I don't know, subjective, right? Like pallets, for example. I know people have their own pallets at home for whatever reason. Maybe they had them left over from rocks that they ordered from Fleet Farm or mulch that they purchased or whatever it is. I have some for the same reason, but I also plan to use them for my business at some point. So they're just leaning against my shed. So something like that kind of sounds silly to regulate, I guess. So that's one question. The second one is sub 10. The home occupation shall not involve the storage of more than 2 commercial vehicles. You may want to define that a little better, because my vehicles are considered commercial, even though they're bicycles, tricycles. So I don't know how that would, stand. Like, for example, I'm planning to have a 3rd vehicle in the fleet, but again, it's...
Trevor, if you look for the purposes of this section, a commercial vehicle shall be defined as a vehicle not exceeding 2.5 tons in capacity. So the bicycles would qualify. I think we can put that back in the hands of the zoning administrator to define that a little more. Maybe it's motorized vehicles. I'm not sure. I'd have to leave that to your creative juices. We can't be the first ones that are considering this.
Yeah.
Well, within, I believe, our definitions within the existing chapter 23, which is our zoning code, we do define commercial vehicle or vehicle more particular. So we can reference that anytime we have challenges or questions on how do you interpret a specific definition. We do often look back at chapter 23.
When you're looking at that, keep the bicycle in mind.
Yep.
Okay.
And a comment, Mr. Rourke?
Yeah, the last comment was sub 8. I support that. I just don't know how it's like currently getting regulated or maintained, because I have any number of neighbors, specifically in my case 3 doors down, where you'll have revving very large trucks, revving engines and peeling out, et cetera, doing way more community damage than my business. And so I don't know, it's kind of odd this is placed here, but at the same time, I agree, it should be here. It's the main intent of this entire ordinance, in my perspective. To be a nuisance is not good if you're a business in a neighborhood. So is that, I don't know, maybe I'm just preaching the choir.
Thank you. I'd say on that last point, we already have a nuisance ordinance in regards to non-home occupation uses. Putting it in this chapter kind of reinforces it that, as you said, your home occupation shouldn't create a nuisance for the neighborhood, the neighbors, dust, smoke, noise, whatever. But we also already have the original ordinance to fall back on. If I am creating a nuisance doing anything that's not a home occupation, that's subject to potential fines as well.
I saw it as a way to not have to define it within the context of this ordinance, but just default to the one that applies to everybody.
Yeah.
That's the way I saw it.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Klein.
Stephen Klein, 301 Union Street. So first off, I want to thank Adam Kuhn for all the work he's done here. It's come a long ways from where we started. So again, item number 7, it's getting to a point where we're beating a dead horse, but the materials, equipment, inventory shall not be stored outside. Again, probably still just need to define that just a little bit better.
Can you give us an example?
Okay, I got shovels and wheelbarrows, and I tend to leave them outside in my backyard, which obviously no one should ever have an issue with it unless you get a really, really bad neighbor, perhaps. It's something that a lot of people would have in their backyard, but if you happen to own a business, it could be a problem here. Also, because it's so specific, I mean, if you have a trailer that you use for business, enclosed or otherwise, you know, like a contractor's trailer. Another thing I had talked to Adam about was possibly having a provision in here, specifically in here, he mentioned that it's probably already covered elsewhere, but it'd be nice to have it covered in this ordinance specifically as a grandfather clause for people who already have established businesses that may not conform to these guidelines, because people invest a lot of money into their business. Myself, for instance, I have 3 vehicles. So just, yeah, I think that sort of covers most of my concerns there. But
So, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a trailer that I use to store my widget maker, it's enclosed, trailers are allowed anyway, so this would not, a trailer on the property that you use for storage would not be in violation of the proposed ordinance, correct? Now, shovels, you brought up shovels, that's a really good point. I don't think anybody's got a problem with 1 or 2 shovels. You start getting into, what, 15, 20, that's probably a bigger issue. So I think there's some room in there to try and figure it out a little bit better. I'd really love to have an ordinance that allows for common sense, but that just doesn't happen ever. So we've got some work to do there too. And then the vehicles, that was brought up by Mr. Rourke as well, so.
Maybe just one comment for sub 7, if there would be a provision saying that there shall be, adding the word visible between no and exterior, saying that there should be no visible exterior storage, basically saying that if you can't see.
Be careful with that.
Or unsecured?
Well, so I like the idea, but be careful with that, because someone could go to, say, I don't know, Menards and buy those 6-foot fence panels and lean them up against the stuff in their driveway, hypothetically on North Georgia Street. We don't want that to be in compliance, right? We want a reasonable storage.
Okay, fair.
So keep that in mind as you're working on rewording that.
yeah, we had actually discussed that specifically with things being like recognizing the difference between a backyard and a front yard.
Yeah.
If it's in the back and out of sight and out of mind, you know, but this doesn't really cover that.
Well, you know, backyards also have backyard neighbors too, so we want to be careful and cognizant of that.
Just also for clarification on the grandfather clause, and we do have a use grandfather clause within our existing zoning ordinance, so this will apply to that.
That helps. Good. Any other comments? This is all good feedback. Yes, sir.
Just one more comment on sub 7. Seems to me that the frequency with which somebody might be storing business-related items is kind of paramount to Mr. Rourke's point. Sure, having a pallet ever on your property to try to enforce that as kind of disqualifying or potentially a finable offense seems silly, but it does make sense to try to prohibit someone from having pallets in their driveway or in their front yard every day or 75% of the month. So it's, again, difficult to regulate that frequency and probably even more difficult to enforce it. It does seem like kind of the the crux of the issue. To Mr. Klein's point, having a wheelbarrow with shovels in your yard a few times a month should not be an issue, but yes, if it's every day, that you need to store that, then there should be a better solution. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to include language that maybe elaborates or specifies kind of frequency of that violation or something.
Okay, good. Any other comments?
I'm Lara. I am the alderperson for District 4. I would just like to echo what we've heard from others today, that subsection 7 is something where it sounds like we really need to do a little bit more work on specifically defining what we're talking about there. But more generally, I'd maybe like to make the point that we should perhaps not allow haggling over the tiny details to allow this to be delayed for too long, since it sounds like it's been in progress for quite a long time. Since we do have that very last section that says you can request waiving. So like if we go through and we make all these requirements and there are a handful of folks who are grandfathered in that might have some stuff in their yard that all of their neighbors are used to already, it seems like this is already working in a way to try and get a one-time ad hoc discussion about that. So just to consider not worrying too much about all of the fine print, although there are clearly areas where we may have a little bit of work to do yet. It seems like we have the means already.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. And if it seems like we're taking a long time, it's because we are, right? Reversing a zoning code is almost impossible. If we find out that we did something wrong or forgot something, it's almost impossible to reverse a zoning code. So we want to make sure we get the basics down pretty well, and we'll continue to do that. Really, I think we're getting some good feedback, and I think we're going to have a product ready for us to consider here in the next month or two. So, any other feedback? Anyone watching at home, if you've got thoughts or concerns or questions about this, contact our Community Development Department and talk to Zoning Administrator Kuhn and provide that feedback. You can do that through email too, or swing by his home address. That's up. No, I'm kidding. But this is all good stuff. So thank you all very much. And Adam, did you need any clarification on anything? You're pretty good? Good. All right, good. Then we will move on to item number 13, Director's Report. Director, report.
Yes, a few things. Please remember that the January Plan Commission will be on January 2nd, 2024. That's a Tuesday, not a Monday. I will not be in the office on Monday, neither will Adam or Chris. So
you sure about that?
Here. I'll probably be there.
Challenge accepted.
Champions Express Car Wash is not moving forward. That was a car wash we recently approved on Highway 10. They've chosen not to move forward with that specific project. And then I would ask the commission to mark January 10th at 6:00 p.m. On their calendars. It's a Wednesday. We'll be having a meeting with a large group, including the Redevelopment Authority, the Transportation Commission, the Parks Commission, and the Common Council. City staff will be presenting some initial conceptual designs for the Shopco redevelopment parcel to get initial feedback, and then we're going to begin the process of finalizing the updating and finalizing the city's downtown targeted area master plan. As some of you might recall, that was originally 2018, going through the process itself. In 2019, former Director Ostrowski left, I came on, and there was just the handoff was kind of sloppy, quite frankly, and then COVID happened, and we had all sorts of challenges, and it was really put on the back burner until we were able to really bring back a new or re-energized idea of what the downtown targeted area master plan could look like. So that'll be the kickoff to that, so that should be really exciting, meaning that will be at Mid-State Technical College in the community room. We are expecting a large crowd, not only for the governing bodies, but also for the public as well. So really looking forward to presenting that to the public at that point. So,
okay. Everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December. With that, our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 7:03.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.